Six Nations Grand River Territory, which is on the east side of what we call Turtle Island, or Mother Earth. We've, as Mohawk people, as Haudenosaunee or Iroquois people, have been fighting resistance and resilience, maintained resilience of our people and nations for over 500 years. And as an Indigenous, as a Mohawk woman, I'm able to stand here after all those years, all the years of a colonial, genocidal government that has been trying to erase us as a people since they arrived on the shores here in North America. So I wanted to share a little bit about the I Don't Know More movement. Recently was the founders of the movement brought by women, four women who was responding to a recent legislation brought by the Canadian government called C-45 and C-38. And the purpose of it is to basically control, they want to control all of the waters, they want to control every process within Canada to control the waters. It's called, one of them is called the Navigable Act, Navigable Waters Act. And it has an impact on the environment. And it has an impact on Indigenous lands and territories where the Canadian government has violated its own laws, not consulting with Indigenous people in this country. And so we continue to fight to protect our lands and our territories. So I want to share a story. I don't have a lot of time talk about history, because sometimes history, Indigenous history and the relationship we have here sometimes isn't taught in our schools. They're not taught in the education system. How many students do we have here? A lot. A lot. And do you know anything, do they teach you about Indigenous history? No. Maybe a little bit? Have you learned about my nation? Mohawk Nation? Haudenosaunee, Iroquois Nation? Have you learned about the nation whose territory we are invited to be here? So this land here, this Indigenous land that this school is built on, is Coast Salish territory. And there's various nations within the Coast Salish territory called the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam peoples. So those are just 3 nations, and there's at least 106 Indigenous nations in the province of British Columbia alone. So that kind of history isn't taught in the schools here. And why do you think that is? It's government control. They don't want you to learn about our history. They don't want you to learn about who we are as a people, because they have had a process and have tried a process of genocide and colonial processes, again, like I said, to erase us as a people. So I'm gonna end, and I want to share this really quick story. This is called a wampum belt in my nation. It's called the Guswenta in my language, and it means a river of life. And we use wampum as a means to remember our history, our oral history. And so this original treaty relationship was made between the Dutch, my ancestors, and the early colonizers, so the Dutch, the French, the British, and the United States. And so this belt represents this river of life. So this one purple line represents their ship that flows along this river of life, that holds their laws, their culture, their tradition. It represents who they are. The other line is our canoe, and that represents our laws, our language, our culture, our tradition. And so we, as Indigenous peoples, have a direct connection to our lands and territories through our languages. So there's also hundreds of languages, of Indigenous languages, and my language is Mohawk. So when I describe my language, when I pronounce my language, it's called Gayangihaga, and that means people of the flint. And so our languages actually directly connect us to our lands and territories. And so this river of life, so we weren't supposed to interfere in each other's way of life, and that we would flow along this river of life. And everything was always sacred. We always had a relationship, we always had a ceremony that recognized that relationship. So peace, trust, and friendship, very basic principles of that relationship. And we weren't supposed to cross, we weren't supposed to interfere in each other's way of life. But Canada, which is a descendant, a colonial government from Britain, so the Crown was the original persons that this relationship was made with. And so when you hear the reasons why our people want the Governor General to be at meetings, because he's supposed to be representing the Crown in this relationship and recognizing and understanding why we're trying to remember this relationship. And part of all of the work that we do is also about our laws is to protect Mother Earth. So we have ceremonies to do that, and we've maintained them. And so that's what we continue to do, and what this continued struggle today is to continue fight to protect. And also one of our teachings is that we think of decisions today and how they have an impact 7 generations from now. So 7 generations ago, my ancestors did this, or more. They thought about me. And so when we are doing our ceremonies, we're also thinking about you, because we're all human beings, and that we all have a life and we all have a relationship with our Mother the Earth. If it wasn't for her, none of us would be here, right? So we have to maintain that responsibility, and that's what we continue to fight for. And so that's what this is about. That's what the Island No More movement is about. It's about that resiliency. It's about remembering who we are, people, as women, as men, as youth, as children, as elders. We all have a role and responsibility. So I would encourage you to fight for who you are, because that's what we do. To remember who you are and where you come from, and to also understand, you know, the media likes to distort things, right? They like to distort and to manipulate. So sometimes you're not reading the truth. So I would encourage you to be really critical thinkers and to think about what you're reading. And if you have Indigenous friends, to ask the questions and to remember what I've said, and that the reasons why we do what we do, and just to really think about it. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for the opportunity.